1, 2, 3, 4. Let's test this, make sure it works. This should be working now. Anybody here? Is this working? We're live? I'm hearing rumors that we are live. Not sure if I want to believe them yet. When you hear this, say 1, 2, 3, 4 in questions, and then I will know that you are live. That's really good news that you can hear me though. That's good stuff. I'm still waiting for the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we will start going. Say 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. We got our first 1, 2, 3, 4s. It is official. All right. So today I'm really excited. We're going to first go over kind of the environment setup. And I know that a lot of you were having some struggles dealing with specifically your terminal environments and Python and that kind of thing. So we're going to make sure that everybody has what they need to make Python work the right way. It really shouldn't be as kind of error prone as it has been. So we'll hope that this works. So real quick, I'm borrowing somebody else's computer, so I hope that we don't have to use a password for anything, because for a variety of reasons, there's an encrypted network here, but we'll make it work. So first of all, let's go over what an environment is. So if any of you on your terminal go echo path, if you're on a Mac, on a PC, I believe it's echo path, but with percentage signs. Path. So let's go echo path. And what we see here is this is basically when your computer runs a program. So when you type Python or something into the terminal, this is all it does. It looks at these different folders and it goes through them one by one. So let's look at user local opt find utils live exec event. And it's going to run those one by one. Okay, cool. We're still live. Just double checking. So basically, when you type in Python, what your computer is going to do is it's going to run through each of these one at a time and look for a program that says Python. So a lot of the defaults are going to be in something like user bin or user default bin, something like that. And let's take a look at where we'll probably be. Let's do cd user local bin ls. And as you can see, these are all of the terminal programs that can run when you type them in. And my guess is, if we look in here, This isn't my computer, so I've never used it, but we've got Python, we've got Python 2, we've got Python 2.7, Python 3, Python 3.5, and as you can imagine, this kind of becomes a huge mess, because if we're just looking through those one at a time, when you type Python, all your computer's going to do is find the first thing in your path that says Python and run it. And when you say Python 3, it's going to find the first thing in your path that says Python 3 and it's going to run it. And similarly, when you start to install new tools or packages, for example, Flask, let's see if he's got Flask installed here. I'm not seeing a Flask, but it could be that he has Flask installed for Python 2.7 and Flask installed for Python 2.5. And there's one thing we need to understand about why programming is different than using a computer as a normal user, and that's that versions are very, very sensitive. So you've probably been used to kind of wanting to update to the newest version of everything, no matter what. But in programming, that usually isn't practical. So we like to freeze things in certain versions to make sure they don't break. And a lot of you have had trouble jumping from Python 2.7, which is installed locally on most computers, to Python 3.5. When you're running pip, you're not really sure which pip you're running, and it becomes kind of a huge mess. So from here on out, I want everybody to use something called a virtual environment, or venv. And we're going to show why this is really, really powerful. So let's go back to our home folder and cd dev. And the reason we're doing this is because so many people are having problems. And we're going to make it really, really clear real quick here. It'll just take a minute. So let's say we need to install virtual env somehow. So Python 3. Let's actually just do pip install virtual env. And there we go. We see that we're already running into issues there. But we're going to go ahead and create a new folder called LambdaBlog. So cd, actually make directory LambdaBlog. And for the rest of the bootcamp, this is the folder that we're going to be working out of. So it's going, everybody, not right now, but when this is over, I want you to make a folder called LambdaBlog and run the following command. So we're going to run virtual env p Python 3 venv. So now what this just did is it created a neat little kind of mini computer within this folder that just has Python 3.5, pip, wheel, and we can see that it just installed all of that stuff. So when we say source, and actually let's look at it. So ls, and we can see there's venv here. So cd venv. It's got a bunch of files here, bin, but basically what it is it just created a new little mini computer for us. Actually, shoot, I didn't cd into LambdaBlog. So we're going to do this again. Virtual env p Python 3 venv. And now it's going to install us a new little mini computer. So we have our little environment inside of this LambdaBlog folder that nothing else can touch. And we know that when we install things in this little virtual computer, that everything's going to work perfectly. So if we say source, and this is the only other command that you need to remember, and we'll send a link to the documentation that shows this. Source venv bin activate. Boom. Now we're inside this little mini computer and we can run programs, we can run apps, and we never have to worry if they're going to run correctly. So I can just do pip install Flask. And I know that it's going to download the correct Flask for where I'm at. And I know that it's all going to work. So now let's go ahead and open up. I'm actually going to open up in Sublime now just because I don't think the guy's computer I'm using has Atom. but maybe he doesn't have it, so we'll just open it up manually. All right. Now let's look at a couple questions because I see some coming in. Is the Python3 command necessary? I just use virtual env the end. As long as you are using a virtual environment that is using Python 3, you're just fine. But what we just typed will work for everybody, whether you're on Windows, whether you're on Linux, it will work for everybody. So that's where we really want everybody, so we don't have to keep worrying about continual code challenges. So now let's go ahead, and I don't know if he has a symlink hooked up, so we're just going to go into user, dev, and we'll open up Lambda blog, which is a brand new folder within Python. Levi wasn't against activating virtual machines. In fact, he highly recommended it. But sometimes we tried to help people that didn't use virtual environments just because it was easier. And apparently we probably should have just made everybody use a virtual environment. So now we know that this will work. Does Sublime need to be installed on that virtual environment? No, it should work on all of them. This is just a new computer, and I don't know if he has a symlink to Sublime at all or what it is. So yeah, you could use Atom and it would work just the same. All right, so we've got our new environment set up. We've got Flask installed, and let's do a quick review of last time. We're going to create a new file, and we'll call it log.py. And we'll save it into that folder. And now, just as a quick review, let's say from Flask, import Flask, and app equals Flask, dunder, main, dunder. And as you guys probably know, this is just the basic syntax for getting a Flask environment up. We'll do app.route and create an index page, def, let's do for now hello world, and let's just return hello world. Does that look familiar to everybody? It should. It's from our homework pretty much. And then we can export Flask app equals log.py Flask run, and provided log does not appear to exist. Okay, maybe I did that wrong. Export Flask app. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. Please verify the path is correct. Let me see here. Okay, first let's actually create new folders. How do you even create a new folder in here? I right click, how do I right click? New folder. And we'll create static. And we will create a folder called templates. Am I in the right place? Flask. Oh my gosh. It happens to the best of us, I guess. Wow. I'm so sorry, you guys. Okay, export Flask app equals block.py. I do not know what's happening. From Flask, import Flask, app equals Flask, under name. Def hello world, return hello world. This is called debugging, guys. Live debugging. I do not know what the hell is happening. Jeez, spaces. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm handicapped today. All right, we got that working. Cool, so we've got our Flask app up and running. We can open it up, and here we have hello world finally. Wow, that is definitely the longest it has ever taken me to create a Flask app. I think the new computer's kind of throwing me off. All right, so here we are. We have a new Flask app. We have our folders that are static and templates. We have our Flask app running. So now let's start to cover databases. So first of all, what is a database? Who has ever seen Microsoft Excel? You probably all have. So Excel looks something like this, where we have a bunch of columns and we have a bunch of rows. And let's actually go ahead and open something up in Google Sheets just for fun. So we're going to call this database.db. And the thing that you guys probably didn't realize is that this is just a very minimalistic form of a database. So we have rows going across the right, going down, we have columns going across the top. And let's go ahead and create a database schema inside of Excel. So let's say we have a blog, and each blog post has an ID, and those go, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each of them have a title, and then they have a post, so the post content. And we can fill those up with whatever we want. Congratulations, you just created a database. Now, the only difference between this and a database is first, we interact with it in code, and second is we have to tell it that this is a number and these are plain text. But other than that, that's pretty much the gist of a database. So when you think database, just think Excel, and it's really, really simple. And I could name this sheet, let's say we want to rename it posts. And this is essentially the same schema that we're going to set up within code. So we have an ID, we have a title, we have a post, and we can fill those both up with text. We have an ID that is numbered, and we call it all posts. It's actually really, really simple. They're not that scary. So we're going to be using a database that's already built into Flask that's called SQLite, but again, the process is pretty much the same for any database, and in fact, we're going to get started right now. I'm just going to take a few questions first. Check your indents. Yeah, that's a good call. Get rid of those. Cool. Tab size. I'm going to wait just a minute for any questions. Feel free to drop them into the questions channel in Slack. Let's check general too. Okay, one question, should we be running a new virtual environment for each project or assignment? Generally, yes. There are some times when it makes sense to extend. I'm not even going to go into that. For our purposes, yes, just fire up a new environment for each new project. All right, I'm not really seeing any more questions, so let's jump right into both building a database and connecting that with our application and HTML. Oh, that's a good question. How do you delete a virtual environment? All you have to do is delete this VN folder and it all goes away. So you can delete one and create a new one as many times as you want. It's pretty straightforward. I love being in virtual environments just because I don't have to think about dependencies. I don't have to think about what's going to install and what's not. It just works. All right, let's jump back into our app. So to give you an idea of what this finished app is going to be, it's going to run on our little server, and when we go to /new, there's going to be fields where we can create a new post and say post, and it's going to post it to our database. So it's going to save that inside of our database. And eventually we're going to have some path, maybe it's the index, maybe we'll call it lists or something, where you're going to be able to view everything that's stored in the database. I'll also show you how to work with a database, how to view what's in the database, and that kind of thing. So it should be fun. So the first thing we need to do is actually create a database. And surprisingly enough, this is really simple. And we just do a new file. I'm going to close the VN folder. And we're going to call this new file database.db. And we're just going to save it in the root folder of our application, get rid of any text there, and we just created a database. Now we can go back into our blog, and let's start to code. This is where it gets really fun. So we already imported Flask. Let's also import render template, just so we can access this templates file here. We're going to be using that. And you guys remember requests for sending and receiving HTTP requests. We're going to need that as well. And now we will import the database. And the database we're going to be using is called SQLite 3. So we'll say import SQLite 3. And it's that simple. Oh, we're on the trial version of Sublime Text. That's awesome. And that's pretty simple. The next thing we need to do, once we have a database, an empty database file over here, database.db, and we have imported SQLite, is we need to create what's called a connection. So a connection just means, hey, we're connecting our application with the database. And to do that, we just say connection. Of course, this is just a variable, so you can call it whatever you want, but we'll say SQLite 3.connect. And we're going to connect it with the database that we just created, database.db. And as you probably guessed, DB stands for database. And just so we make sure that we're doing it correctly, we're going to print table created successfully. So that's just a note to ourselves that it's working. And then after that, we can close it. Connection.close. So really simple. We've got our first route here. That's just returns hello world. So let's go ahead and create our next route, which is going to be at new. app.route/new. And again, you guys have seen that syntax before. So let's do def. And we're going to call this function newPost. Again, we can really call it whatever we want. And for this one, we need to plug in a template. So we'll say return render template new.html. So what we did is we just connected this /new URL with a template that does not exist yet. So let's go ahead and create a new file. And we will call it new.html. and we're going to save it inside of our templates. Easy enough, right? Now let's take a look at new. Basically, this is just a raw HTML file. We've seen this one before, HTML, and we're going to close the HTML. It looks like he's got some fancy auto generator, so we don't have to work very hard. Body, close the body. Wow, look at that. And we're going to create a form and close the form. Now, basically all we're going to do in here is let's create, say, an H3 that says we're creating a new post. And then let's say we have a title, and this is just, and then we can put this in a paragraph. Paragraph title. And then we're going to put an input type equals text. And then we'll create a break. And post. Now you guys are going to be creating something very similar. Wow, you didn't spell input correctly. Input. And actually, for this one, let's do a text area. So it gives us a little more space to type. And we'll just leave it just like that for now. Break. And let's create a submit button. Input type equals submit. Value equals submit. And we'll create a new break there. And that's really going to be our entire form. So we could run this. Actually, I think I didn't miss a step. But we need to create our table. We didn't actually create it. We just opened up a connection. So let's go into, let's see, before we close it. The other thing that a connection can do is what's called execute. So connection.execute. And we'll put some code in there in just a second. And then we're going to print, actually, here let's print table created successfully. And here let's just say open database successfully. Open database. Is that intended? All right. And so here we have, again, this is our connection. We're going to open the database, and then we're going to do something to the database, and then we're going to close the database. So this is kind of the tricky part of this whole assignment, and that's just that you have to understand a little bit, or I guess copy and paste a little bit of what is happening with the code. So we're going to say create table, if not exists. And what that says is, look, if there isn't a table yet that's called posts, let's go ahead and get rid of that. Wow, I need to. Guys, I am having some fun today. All right, create table if not exists. We'll call it posts. And then, as we said, we have title that's text and post that's text. And that's pretty much, assuming I did that correctly, all there is to that. Cool. So we'll go ahead and save that. Let me just do a sanity check and make sure I'm running. I don't have any typos. Looks like we've got that. We're going to load it up. Hello world. Let's go to new. And here's the form that we created. So we have a title and a post and submit. So we can say some title, some post, and hit submit. And we'll definitely get an error because that didn't actually go anywhere. Let's see. All right, let's jump back into Sublime. So we have this new function, and it opens up this new, I guess it's a new post function, and it references this new HTML. We have all of this, we have this form in here, but we don't have anywhere yet for the form to post to. So what we actually need to do is we're going to create an action equals and this is just some URL. URL for add record. Method equals post. So what we did here, for those of you that aren't very familiar with forms, is we're basically saying, hey, when somebody submits the form, we're going to send a post request, and you guys should all know what post requests are, with all of this information to this URL, a URL for add record. And we'll have to create that later. But we could say it's, for example, we could theoretically plug in add record or whatever, and that would work. We just want to make sure that it's safe. So you guys all remember what post requests are. We're saying, all right, take whatever is in these fields and submit them to this add record URL. And that's really all it's going to be. We also need to give these fields names so it knows what to post. So for these, we'll just say name equals title. And for the post, we will just say name equals post. And we've already got the submit button. So now let's stop the server, run this. And when we run this, yeah, I messed something up. We'll come back to that later. So form action, post, title, name equals post, type equals text, name equals title. Looks like there's some funny quotes going on here. I don't like this syntax highlighting. What is going on? Let's URL, I don't need that. URL for add record, I don't need that. What on earth? That's why you shouldn't use other people's computers. URL for add record. Gosh dang it. I think that should be it. All right, let's try running that again. Okay. We've got our hello. We've got our new. That still didn't work. Let's see. And just so you guys know, this is about what half of programming is. We're going to create post, title, post. What's up here? Render new template. Okay, we're just gonna. Actually, let's take a few questions. I think the problem here is we just haven't defined add record yet. So that should be just fine. Let's look back. What folder is database.db in? It's just in the parent Lambda blog folder. This is kind of a weird way to view it, but it's just in the parent folder. Yeah, so what we have here, let's look at new. We've got this form, and whatever you send here, it's going to send a name of post and a name of title to this add record URL. So now we have to set up add record to receive that. So let's go ahead and do app.route. We'll say add record. And this is one thing that we haven't done before. We have to set up this route to be able to receive post requests. Methods equals post. And there is some crazy syntax highlighting going on here. A couple more questions. Can't you just say action equals add record? Yeah, you can. But instead, I'm going to create this function called add record, and we're going to link it that way instead. But you could totally just say /add record instead of creating a fancy link to a route. All right, we good? Okay. So let's actually create this add record. So what this needs to do is needs to receive the information from new.html and save it into our database. And it's probably a lot more simple than you guys would think. So we'll call it add record. And we have to create the connection again. And as you guys can see, it's pretty much the same as what happened up there. And then we have to create something called a cursor. And that's just a function that lets us write in our database. And just so you guys know, there are a lot of different kinds of databases, a lot of different ways you can do all this. So I'm sure you'll have the question, like, how do you know that you need to do this? The answer is really just you're going to look up the documentation and you're going to copy and paste from the documentation or figure out what you need to do. So we'll do try title equals request.form title. So what happened here? We have this, we're creating a new variable called title, and what we're grabbing with this variable is this title. So it's using request to send it over to the other URL, and we're going to grab it in this new variable. And then post equals request.form post. And that's doing the same thing. Whatever we type in the post here in new, it's going to send it over to this URL, and we're going to capture it with this variable. And I actually need to indent this, I believe. Enjoy this Python. All right, there we go. Cursor.execute insert into posts. And so we're going to insert in this title post. And this is going to be some crazy syntax, but we'll explain it in just a second. So what just happened there? So we have this cursor. This cursor is the thing that can actually write into our database. And so we're saying insert into posts. So insert into this posts database this table is what we should call it, that we just created. And we're going to, why is that capitalized? I don't want that capitalized. And for the title and the post here, so for title and post, we're going to insert what we created here, title and post. And that is how we tell it to write to the database. And I'll get to questions in just a second. Then connection.commit, and that says, okay, actually write it, don't just pretend to write it. And then we're going to create a new variable called message. Record successfully added. And then just in case something goes wrong, except we'll say connection.rollback, which means, whoa, hold on, don't do anything in the database. Message equals error insert operation. All right, and before we run this and go too crazy, I'm going to jump back into some of the questions because it looks like there are some. Can you just say action equals /add record? Yes, you totally can. Is it okay to just rename the virtual environment I had set up initially to what Austin did today? Yeah, you could totally do that. I might try creating a new one and running that again instead of trying to fiddle with things that are already running. It's probably easiest to just remove the environment entirely and reinstall. But I think that should be most of it. And then the last thing we need to do is return we're just going to give ourselves a message. Oh, don't need that. So we're going to, after we've finished this form, we're going to send us to result.html, and then we're going to display this message here so we know if it worked or not. And that is really, let's go ahead and create a new file, and we will call it, what do we call it, result.html. And then in result.html, let's just create HTML. And we'll create body. And we will just say result of addition of database is the message that we created. So let's run that and see where we messed up first of all, because I'm sure we messed up somewhere, and see what happened. All right, so we've got running on here. Hello world /new. All right, let's create. This is my title. This is my post, and this is the moment of truth. Record successfully added. I think we actually did it without too terribly much debugging. Now, what we want to do here is look at what actually happened to the database. So try to view what's happening in our database. So we can actually Google SQLite 3 viewer. Actually, I want this guy. So you can download programs that do it, but we can actually do it just right here. We'll go find that file. Actually, let's go here. And we'll just open it in Finder. And all we're going to do is drag our entire database into this cute little viewer. If I can figure out how to drag. Apparently I can't figure out how to drag. All right, so that is it. That is the database that we just created, and we can see the title here and the post here, and that's it. So let's take a minute, take a few questions, go over some of what just happened there, and make sure that we all understand what just happened. So let's again start from the top, just as one more overview. So we imported Flask, render template, request, and SQLite 3. Those are just packages that we needed. We created our Flask application. We connected to our database, and then we printed that we connected just to double check that we connected correctly. And then we said, if there isn't a table yet that's called posts with a title that's text and a post that's text, let's go ahead and create it. And then we'll say that was created successfully, and then close it just to make sure that we're not leaving any loose ends open. And then we created a Hello World app. We didn't really do a Hello World function. We didn't really do anything with that. Then we created a new page of HTML called new.html. Within this new page, we had a few fields. We had a field that we named title, and a field that we named post, and we sent those fields to add record. So somebody was asking before if we could just say add record. Yeah, we totally can. I like to do it this way just in case for some reason we change the path of add record sometime in the future. So we have add record here. It accepts post requests. And we open the connection to the database and create a cursor, and then we just say, okay, let's take the title and the post from this HTML page, and we're going to insert it into the database and say that it was successfully added, and return that in result.html. So it looks like this, for some reason, this is confusing a lot of people here. Can you just say add record? Yep, you can, and that would still work. Let's jump into some questions and let's see what's going on. Do I have to manually create the static folder? Yes, you just manually create a folder, name it static, and Python knows to look inside of that. Can I see your blog.py? I'm getting an error. Yes, we will post this as well as the homework in just a few minutes. Yeah, URL4 wasn't entirely necessary, but it's good for you guys to know that that exists, because most stuff that you'll see will use URL4 instead of just linking directly to a page, just to make sure that things work and don't get fragile and broken later on. And I'll wait a little bit to see if there are any more questions. I know that this is a lot to take in. Really, we just wanted to get this out there so that you could start going over the databases and figuring it out on your own. Is there a convention for method names? Use underscores in one instance and not in another instance. I generally use underscores. I didn't in add record just because sometimes in databases that's all just one thing. I'm still getting the could not find a version that satisfies requirement render template error, even after manually creating the static folder. Make sure that you have imported render template from Flask. I believe that will be the error there. It looks like, yeah, this, for some reason this text editor likes to add all sorts of quotation marks that I don't know why it does that. It's not what I'm used to, but it works, I guess. I think that's right. All right, what other questions do we have? Yeah, don't worry about your errors right now. We'll go over them all in just a minute. Just kind of make sure that you've got the concepts down and that you understand, generally speaking, what's going to happen, we'll share this code so that you can go over it. And I'm sure the first time you run it, you're going to get errors. You'll probably hear the relief in my voice when I didn't get any errors. There's a lot of delicate stuff that's kind of balancing off of each other. And apparently sometimes I can't even import Flask correctly. So don't worry about getting errors. We'll figure them all out. Any other questions you guys have? Someone just direct messaged me and said, what is the full-time course like? What pace does the full-time course go at? Basically, the entire month-long bootcamp that we're doing here would take about 2 days in the full-time course. And I know that sounds crazy, but when it's one-on-one and you're writing a bunch of code and you have all day, it makes a lot more sense. Where did I save database.db? It's just in the parent directory. Everything except for static and templates is just at the top level of Lambda blog. All right, we'll give it a couple more minutes for more questions. And then I think we might be done. There's going to be some homework, and there's going to be a lot of reading to do to understand what's happening with databases. But next time, what we're going to show you is that once you have this information saved to a database, it's really easy to use that within your application. So, nope, there's nothing in static. So we can actually just create pages that display this information really beautifully. And we'll work a little bit on the front end and making sure it works really well, it is beautiful, and that kind of thing. All right, if there's any more questions, I'll be around for a little bit. And is there anything special needed to install SQLite 3? Nope, SQLite 3 comes with Python, and no, there is nothing in the database file. It's just an empty database.db. Why use the static folder versus the templates? They have different meanings. So the templates is something that you theoretically use over and over again, and the static folder would just be, a blank page. So maybe your about page would just be static, whereas your templates you would use time and time again for all sorts of different programmatic stuff. But you can, for what we've done, you could theoretically use them both for the same thing because they're just looking at some pretty static HTML and plugging some stuff in. I have SQLite 3 installed in my OS installation, but it's not in the virtual environment. SQLite 3 comes natively with Python and Flask, so if that's the case, then there's something else that's wrong, and we'll look into it and figure it out. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for hanging out today, and we will be around for sure.